Welcome to Masculine Journey. Yeah, we're glad that you're with us today. I was listening to our intro, and I want to make sure something's clear. It says losing heart, not losing art. Because we always have wear art out, right?
Yeah.
And so art's not missing. We know where he's at most of the time. But I just want to clarify that in case somebody got confused. Anyway, the topic for today, Darren, is yours. If you want to bring it up and talk about it with everybody.
Well, it's 12 topics.
Yeah.
We don't know how many it's going to be, but it's basically the start of a series on kind of what the end result is going to be, what kind of drives us to look for comforters to a certain extent. But that's not the way that it came to me. The way that it came to me was I had an overwhelming sense of wanting justice and began praying and just saying, God, my sense of justice is really, really heightened right now. And I can imagine this is not necessarily great, but it feels like it would be good if I could get some justice. And so about that time, God kind of revealed some things to me about that namely his sense of justice is way stronger than mine. And then began reminding me that, his sense of anger is way stronger than mine, and his sense of grace is way stronger than mine, and mercy and peace and all of those different things. And then it kind of brought me around to the question of, why do I want justice? Why was it that I wanted justice? Was it just John Wayne? We grew up in a John Wayne culture. I've seen all of his movies. I've seen all of Clint Eastwood's movies. I've seen all of Mel Gibson's movies, I think. And so, justice always wins in the end, except it doesn't. Gladiator, hero dies. Jesus, hero dies, comes back to life. And so it's not always justice as I see it or as we see it. And so I had to begin to ask myself, why is it that I'm seeking that justice? And what I came back to was, I think it would make me feel better, which is probably more what it sounded like to me than I'm seeking to be comforted. But then I started going to all of those other places that, when justice is understood correctly, when righteousness, when truth, when grace, when peace, when mercy, when all of those things are understood correctly, I have a much better chance at comfort. But there are all sorts of adulterated versions of those things, I guess is the best way to put it, that often take us out. We have a lot of lies that are told to us about what those things should be. And so we need truth to come in and root out those lies and begin to set us free. So this topic kind of started out as God versus man. God versus Darren was really what it was, is my sense versus his sense of all these different aspects. And so that's kind of where we've taken it.
Yeah, I think I stole it then and said, you made it a different topic. But
I don't think you made it a different topic. I think you honed it in on the fact that all of those wrong assumptions lead us towards false comforters. It's not wrong to seek comfort.
Right.
It's perfectly righteous to seek comfort. It's where are we going for the comfort?
Yeah, outside of God.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Robbie, you have the first clip of this
Yeah,
show.
so, here in the Holy Grail, Monty Python's version of the Holy Grail, they were seeking comfort because, they knew their whole problem, was that they needed justice on this witch. And so they found a witch, and they are convinced that if they can burn her, that this is the answer to their struggles. And, it's a visual kind of thing to see it. I want to point out a couple things. That the woman that they've offered up as the witch, they've dressed her up pretty much with this very witch-looking hat, and they put a really long nose on her that's strapped to the back of her head, quite obviously. And so you have to see that part of the visual to fully get the idea of what's going on here. But clearly, these townspeople have or trying to find some justice from here. So, the really scary, as funny as that is, and I find it absolutely hilarious, is I'm sure that's how God has felt many times as he watched Robbie up trying to find the witch that I could put my finger on that's the reason for all my problems. And if I can only burn her, but the whole thing is utterly ridiculous from a standpoint of how we go on a witch hunt, right? And that's exactly what I've done so many times in my life. It's unbelievable. But the beauty of the clip, from my perspective, is that just like Darren mentioned, those ideas are all in the 85th Psalm. And if you look in the 85th Psalm, it talks about that love, or hesed, is going to touch truth. And justice, or righteousness, is going to kiss peace. And so here's 4 gigantic principles that come together, that so when I can get some truth into my witch hunt, right, I can begin to feel the peace, which is the comfort. It's the shalom, is the idea of being complete, but also, fascinatingly, Darren, as you did that study on justice, people that get justice don't necessarily, in other words, if these guys gotten their witch burned,
Mm-hmm.
were they going to feel better? Would they have been comforted?
Yeah. So secularly, just looking into this and studying the issue, the people that find the most comfort are those who choose to forgive, while the perpetrator is still alive. Oftentimes, when the perpetrator dies, while in the act of committing the crime or whatever, that justice still isn't there, or they get executed, or they get put in prison forever, or whatever. That is never the same amount of comfort that someone gets who is a believer, obviously, at some level, and says, no, I'm not going to let this rule over me. I'm going to forgive.
I love your clip, Robbie, because that you claim it is very impressive too. We laugh at that, but who doesn't see what they're looking for in situations and other people? If you think this person's really ugly because somebody told not ugly in the physical sense, but got a nasty person and you don't want anything to do with them, you're going to see it in them, whether it's really there or not. And we do create the illusions and what we think are the truths.
It becomes a predetermined thing when you see it. We have clients at work, and so we have touch points with the clients, and so I'm really hesitant to read about the previous touch points because it's going to give me an opinion, and I want to have my own opinion, right, and figure it out from there. But yeah, I think it was interesting when we're talking about false comforters. I think it's important that people kind of realize what that is. We assume everybody knows what that is, right? But it's things like, turning to food for comfort, turning to lust for comfort, turning to a relationship for comfort outside of God, right? Mm-hmm. Turning to shopaholic, you get retail therapy, and the question is, do those last? Is it a lasting comfort? And the answer is always no, right? And often it'll lead us into some really bad places, right? Maybe we have big credit card debt. Maybe we have, an addiction now because of what I've turned to for comfort. And so that's what we're talking about, is what do you look to give you that little bit of peace that you feel like is going to help you just get through life today.
All right. It's fascinating to me. In the very first chapter of Haggai, there's all this list of things that you plant this, you do this, and do you feel better? And then you go do this, and this. Do you feel better? And he's saying that at the end of that, where it gets to about chapter 4 in Haggai 1, it says, "Go to the mountain and bring your wood and build me a house." In other words, what we're looking for is a sanctuary, but we don't get it unless we build it. And I don't know if you ever thought about this, but Jesus took his own wood to the top of the mountain. And, Haggai kind of predicted that, as Isaac took his own wood to the top of the mountain. And so there's a bit of sacrifice that apparently is involved in building your sanctuary. It's something to think about as you read that in Haggai, that he was saying these things, you're going to spin your wheels with all these false comforters. But that's not what I have in mind for you. Is I want to be in your sanctuary with you. And that relationship is just beyond cool when you think about it.
Absolutely. So just a question for you. If you're sitting out there and you're saying, well, I really don't do that, I would say, can you just be honest with yourself? Because obviously
I'm always honest with myself.
Stop it. We all do it, right? And so then you have to say, okay, where does it come from? What are those things that cause me to want to do that, which we'll get into after the break. But you have those kinds of things, and then there's things even deeper under there, right? And it's that exploration you have to take with Jesus. Part of building your house in a different way is I got to peel back those layers and get to the truth of the situation so Jesus can help me there.
Yep.
Right. So go to masculinejourney.org to look for anything we have coming up. Right now we have nothing scheduled. We'll talk to you after the break. I didn't know what to say. I'm always used to saying Masculine Journey.
That's pretty
I
funny.
need to, I know it's still showing, but Mike reached out to me and said, you guys are saying you don't have anything to announce. And I've asked my brother.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
People listen
Obviously,
carefully.
there
They're gonna
is
follow.
a way these are supposed to be on.
There's an R.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
The L is for
Arthur, is
loser.
that you at the chair?
All right, for really loser.
I should say those ones.
Hey, it'd be great.
I saw 3 bags of works of art that I previously missed. Like, oh my gosh, we have so many works of art. It's unbelievable.
I have enough.
Honey bear.
Welcome back to Masculine Journey. That is a group called Risen Tunes. Don't know who that is, don't know where it came from, and the song is Comfort Me. And so I was just looking in a search engine to say, okay, what kind of songs could we use for that bump? And I stumbled across this one. So, and that's kind of what we're talking about is how do we learn to take all of these things to God instead of to the other things we think are going to give us life or give us relief or give us some type of break from what we're dealing with.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, where I started was, if I can get justice, I'll have a little comfort, and then realized pretty quickly, no, that's probably not true. If I can get a little justice, maybe it'll help somebody else feel better. Well, yeah, probably not true. But the ultimate reality for me was, when any of these things justice, truth, grace, mercy, love, any of these things are out of kilter, there is no comfort. I mean, there might be false comforters, to your point, that last for a day or maybe a few minutes, but it's not going to last. And so we're going to go back seeking again and again and again. And we get wound up in that instead of wound up in sitting with God and saying, okay, God, I trust you that you're going to get justice far better than I will. And I don't like that. I mean, let's just be real. I don't like that. But when I think about it, I can go many places. One of those is, yeah, I kind of like that God might get justice, that's way better than mine. But when you start considering that, then you have to realize, well, yeah, but God's mercy is also better than mine. And so God may very well have mercy on that person. He's ultimately trying to get that person to experience mercy and grace and love and all of those things. And maybe I get to play a role in that. Well, I'm not necessarily excited about that either. There's all these dichotomies that keep happening. And so it became, a point of wrestling. And I think all of us are kind of wrestling a little bit with that right now.
Now you bring up a point that I hadn't really thought about, but talking about God's judgment and all, God was ready. He was done with the Israelites, and Moses stood in. And did he have more mercy than God? Actually, the Bible suggests that. But I think it was pleasing to God that he had raised a son that would have that position because they were partnering together, and it brought the salvation of Israel.
I think Harold was there. He's got.
What'd they say there?
I was just going to ask, do we really see our Jonah side?
Right.
That's true.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Jim, we have your clip up next.
And I went straight to number 4 as peace. And all 4 of them, including justice, come out of God's love. But where I've sought comfort both in the wrong direction and with God is primarily in the peace area. And I don't think I've shared a few times, but I am called to be a peacemaker this year. That's my word of the year. And I've always sought peace. This clip is Desmond Doss, who reminds me of me in that I would not get in fights, which when you're in junior high school, 50, 60 years ago, 60 years ago, by avoiding fights, I attracted people that wanted to beat up the big guy. And I had learned pretty early that I'm the big guy. If I beat the little guy, then I'm the villain. If I get beat by the little guy, I'm the laughing stock. So I was pretty much a complete pacifist as a kid. You could get me to fight, and I did a few times. I did a lot of times, but I would walk away from them if I had any opportunity. Desmond Doss is in World War II. If you have not seen wrong one, Hacksaw Ridge, do see it. This is a true story of an incredible man. And he was, I'm not going to say anymore. We're going to listen to him. But he has been charged with disobeying a direct order from a superior officer, which is pretty serious stuff. And this is his defense. as I kind of pointed out up front, I identify with that. And the only time I ever started a fight, and I wish I'd done it more often, but it was going into battle for someone that was getting picked on. I had a heart to bully bullies, but no one else. And I was bullied quite a bit during those rough formative years back when that wasn't a capital crime and you were put away if you were a bully. But it really, Doss's statement hit the heart of the reality that we are in the midst of war. And he was going to war, but he was going to war with the heart for peace. And when you're doing that with God, then that is for me, that's the most important of the four. And yeah, I need grace and mercy. I wouldn't be his without it. And justice scares me because I know what justice would mean in my life. But that is something I'd like to see others receive. I don't really want justice. But ultimately, peace is my place to go where I get complete comfort if it's from God. If not, then I'm the little kid who's running away from the fight and not wanting to get hurt. And that sometimes can be a bigger hurt than what damage you'll take in the battle.
Absolutely. I was sitting down the other day trying to think as this topic came up, what kind of things lead me to seek comfort, right? And I'll play a clip in the after hours that kind of names some of these, but there's a whole host of them. When you really start to sit down and think about it, that boredom, you think of David when he was bored, and that's when he discovered Bathsheba, right? When he was no longer going to war. I never had anything that eloquent, but it was like I have my own boredom. But loneliness, anger, hurt, fear, shame, feeling misunderstood or not listened to, having the spirit of entitlement, being tired, feeling like you have no control, which none of us have control, to be quite honest, but it's that feeling of no control. And when I let the enemy take those things and spin them in a direction that takes me out of control, when I join him on the journey, I end up in places I don't want to be. I end up, staying up late, eating lots of food I shouldn't be eating, that kind of thing. Or that's when the pull towards pornography is worse, right? Is when I'm in the midst of all that. And so it's just those things to say, okay, God, I need to learn quicker before I look at the refrigerator to look to you and say, okay, how can you help me here, God? What do I need? How are you trying to help me? And I don't have the eyes to see it.
That's, interesting. Jim said a minute ago, it would be okay if I see other people see justice, but I'm not so sure about me. And it made my heart go search something. And I was like, wait a minute. Justice, when you look at it on a Hebrew level, as you might imagine, I would think about it, that it has to do with a right relationship with God that's phenomenal. And it's a closer relationship as a result. In other words, Jesus suffered on the cross for the right relationship for me. And so fascinatingly, is if what we really want for that other person is to have real, live, honest to goodness justice, it's an amazing gift. It's an amazing gift. In a way that I hadn't thought about it, Jim. I'm just saying you challenged me to think about it, and I was like, that's fascinating. But it really is. I went and looked at it, and I'm like, oh, look at this. That would be pretty good. I think, I could really use a right relationship with God, and I could certainly use to be a whole lot closer with Him.
Well, Jim, you've been bringing a lot of fascinating things. Some we can't talk about in here, but yeah,
Or anywhere else.
or anywhere else. And so,
Fascinating. That's a good
yeah, if you missed the pre-show, you might want to look sometime because we actually talk about some things there at the post-show. But anyway, ask yourself on this topic. Just be genuine and say, God, what are those things that I'm putting in front of you? And it won't take long to start making a list. To say, okay, what are those things that I look to give me this peace that I feel like I'm going to get? I have a really, really good friend that is retail. The person likes retail therapy, and they wonder why they continue to get in credit card debt, right? When the stuff no longer makes them happy, and they have like a bunch of different storage units to keep the stuff they don't need that they thought was going to make them happy, and more bills. And it's just how that compounds on each one of us. I'm not judging that person. I'm saying I got my own version of that. And so I'm just asking you to ask God, what is my version of that? We'll talk with you next week. Let God love on you, and in turn love on others well.
I think these
Yeah, Robbie, that would be an amazing gift. It's just, I don't really want them to have God's justice. I want them to have Darren and Harold's justice.
I'm with you. I was sitting there thinking while you were, I was going to say it on the air, but I didn't, for whatever reason. But, you're sitting there and you're having a struggle with the bank or something, and they're from some other country, and they have no sense of what you're trying to explain, and they want to, you tell them about 3 times, here's what I'm trying to get to. And oh boy, okay, I go check manager, and then after 10 minutes more of hold and listening to that music, they come back and at this point in time, peace is nowhere to me. I mean, like I am ready to rip my hand through
I've been through some
and just like, can you not let me talk to somebody that can speak English and has some sense, like and.
I cuss out the IVR system. I mean, they can't even. I want to just talk to a person. They won't let me talk to a person.
Oh, I'm telling you.
Oops.
No, it's exactly it.
But if you stay quiet, they'll either hang up on you or put you through to a person.
Yeah.
No, well, I have to yell at them.
But I would just.
I have to.
I realize the problem is inside here, something that's triggered inside of me. But I just wonder, what in the world is that? That whoever's driving the bus at this point in time is a wild man. He is.
The misunderstood.
Last week was not good.
It's, entitled, what were you said,
We got a bunch of them.
misunderstood.
Misunderstood, not listened to.
Not being heard, not being listened to.
Right.
I think about entitled. That's way up there on my.
I have this.
Look at me. I'm important.
I have a great sense, not in a good way, of that I need to explain myself because you probably don't understand me. You're probably putting me in a box that seems familiar to you, but I'm not in that box. And so I'm trying to explain, who am I really, or what am I really thinking? And that leads to more confusion more often than not. If you're dealing with impatient people, especially if you're dealing with a group of people, especially if you're dealing with one loving, kind person, then yeah, you can probably get there. But I find myself writing emails and I'm thinking, okay, I need to explain this. And then I'm like, nope, I just need to say this. And I'm like, yeah, but if I do, then they're not going to, and I'm sitting there having this.
They're not going to understand.
And then so I write the short email and it's totally misunderstood.
Yeah.
And it's like, ugh.
You don't understand that the problem I have is not one that your programmer anticipated. Give me somebody to talk to that can think.
Yeah, I'm thinking more along the lines of our marketing people. When I'm trying to tell them what it is that I need, and I go to the nth degree to make sure they understand it's this, not that, and make a phone call before that time to say it's this, not that, and then write it in a.
Well, it was funny is I had trouble with PayPal today trying to get it to accept my charity status. I don't know if you've gone through this, but oh my gosh. And of course, PayPal's got there is no way to get a real human
It's like dealing with Amazon.
to get past whatever. And so I give the problem to ChatGPT, and it writes a thing. It said copy and paste this directly into their messenger. And it gave it subject matter, this,
Wow.
this, and this long thing. And at the bottom, it said, may I speak to a real person? And I'll be dadgum. I pasted that thing in there, and it says, you'll be speaking to Andrea shortly. In 6 minutes, I had a person. Woo! But it knew that you can't just say, I want to speak to a person.
Which tells you that the people that are the most frustrated are the ones using ChatGPT because it's educating it.
Well, that is part of the problem is what sets us off. I don't think is necessarily always wrong, because these people that write these systems could care less, and there is some injustice in that. Now, should it set me through the roof?
Mm-hmm.
It should not. But there is that thing. We in a nation we're set for a long time, and we're used to a certain set of standards because people wanted to do a good job. And now they could care less. It's all about the buck and stuff. And no, it's not right to get upset, but it's like
my friend Jamie used to just every time we would go to remodel somebody's house and we would open up a wall and we would see what somebody did before.
Yeah.
And Jamie would go, why can't people just do the job? You know what I mean? And he would get on. I was like, Jamie, they've been gone for 20 years, man. But that's the
Now, if it's 40 years, it was the job was done right.
Probably, yeah. But yeah, it's that. Well, I wrote what I was supposed to write. You know, if A happens, do B. Yeah. It's a flow chart. Well, 87% of all problems don't fit into the flow chart. You know, and so you get a half answer, or you get a wrong answer.
That's what I hate. When they start guessing at what you want.
I have a postcard on my cubicle wall that says it all. I can explain it to you, but I can't understand it for you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Yeah.
We all seem to need comfort, just saying.
We definitely need comfort.
But Art, I don't think Art, you just sail through life.
Very comfortable.
You made me
persevere,
think of
right?
Southern
There's
comfort, the way you said that. Some people
I saw comfort in Southern comfortable.
What do you want to
Wild turkey,
have
do.
Andy's next? Or Andy, Danny, yours, mine.
Wild turkey
Yeah,
is
do
actually
whichever
one of the better things
one that
for the
Andy wants to do.
dollar. I mean, it's
Mine would be
fairly cheap.
You gonna do Groundhog?
Groundhog Day.
Yeah, do that. It's funny. And then I would, wherever you want to go from there. Danny's or yours.
It's fascinating. He doesn't care about her poetry. Like he cared so much about her poetry before, but here is like, that's a joke. It's like he's figured out at this point in time, she ain't going to remember tomorrow what I said.
Yeah.
I can't remember that sequence it was in. That was probably earlier, wasn't it?
It was earlier
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. Yeah.
When they're still trying
I think it was right after he started trying to kill himself and couldn't.
Yeah.
I think you're right, Jim. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Steal the ground.
Throwing himself down from the temple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got about a minute and some.
But there's eggplant for everybody to say.
I'll take one anyway. I'd love some eggplant.
I will leave one.
We had them grilled. They were.
He heard a dozen
awesome.
eggs and he thought it meant a dozen eggplant.
You want to take them to your ministry?
Oh yeah, I'll use them. Yeah, I can take them to the hotel.
If there's one left after all that, I'll take one. I like it.
Sheila and I watched a TV show last night that some guys cooked some eggplant in a way that made me think, maybe. But I just never liked the flavor of it at all. It was just kind of too sour. Like, I don't know. Just don't like it.
It's aubergine. That's a little disturbing.
Yeah.
Well,
That's one of my favorite colors.
yeah. Well, you must like Nevada Health.
I had purple carpet before it was cool in my bedroom at home.
One is a builder. And, I don't know if this one. I'll wait.
Just gets slower and slower.
Welcome to Masculine Journey After Hours. We are continuing to talk about the things that drive us to comfort outside of God, right? Our ultimate comfort needs to be God, right? And so we've been talking about that. We're kicking off a series, and we don't even know what to call the series because we've already had foundations, we've already had pillars.
I named it
Oh, did you? What'd you name it? We got to speak in the microphone, Danny. I can't hear you.
Masculine Journey Boulder Series.
Oh, Boulder Series. That's a boulder. That's a nice boulder.
Okay,
Does anyone know the size a rock has to be considered a boulder?
No.
I'm
I
sure
bet you we're getting ready to find out.
rock on,
It's
Jim.
just a touch over 10 inches.
Okay. Just like rock band.
Did you say it's a touch over 10 inches?
Yeah, I think it's 10.1 because it's actually in metric system. But they've got very specific sizes, and boulders are bigger than
Is
that.
that a circumference? Or
That is that. No, that
Diameter.
is the diameter.
okay. Is there pi involved?
I think it might be. Older pie.
Oh,
Anyway, you got
You
more?
better have really good teeth. Right?
Yeah. Put your nose to the grindstone. Here we go. Andy, you have the first clip of this show, and so you want to tell us what your clip has to do with anything?
Yeah, so yeah, y'all left me hanging out there. I was the only one that read anything about comfort.
Rock on, Todd.
Right. So this clip is from Groundhog Day, and it's not one we typically use or I've used before, but whenever they mention comforters, I think false comforters from just kind of what we've gone through over the years. And I never really had tied it to the topics of justice and mercy and grace and peace. I'm just thinking, I just know that I go to false comforters whenever I'm looking for some relief. And food has always been one of those things, you know. Some of the lust and stuff has been taken away, and I've I've always enjoyed food, and I've never used to think anything about it. But it truly can be a comforter. I know on a Friday night, and I've had a hard week at work, I'm gonna, look for a pizza or a steak to give some comfort.
You know, something's wrong when you open the refrigerator and you go, "How do you do it?"
That's right. Exactly. Hey, baby. That's right. I mean, there's a whole category around it. Comfort food, right? I mean, it's a real thing, and
How you doing?
and so in this clip from Groundhog Day, Bill Murray, he's caught in the Groundhog Day, and he's beginning to realize there's not a lot of ramifications. He gets the same day over, so he's gonna enjoy some food and some smoking and some other things, and it's on repeat, and it's kind of like my days repeat. It's like I'm getting that comfort from food on a regular basis, but with me there are consequences to it. Correct. Thank you. And he's got Rita talking to him, and she's trying to get him to reconsider this. And again, this is a time where he doesn't really care because he doesn't have any consequences to his actions. So,
Yeah, he's out of control, so he's spiraling.
yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Here we go.
Yeah, that can be me. I mean, even today, I had to go to the orthodontist, and when I did, I hit a couple spots after it, and I think I was looking for some comfort when it came out. But you do really look at that. There's a certain amount of justice, or it brings peace. You're looking for peace outside of God. What I will say though is you don't think of the whole idea of communion, the whole idea of the sacrifice. All those were tied for God in food and sharing it with man. And there is a communion, and we go to food for that, I think, a lot of times instead of that communion with God. But just an example, this is one of my reading from today is Deuteronomy 14, verse 22. You shall certainly tithe all the produce from what you sow, which comes from the field every year. You shall eat in the presence of the Lord your God at the place where he chooses to establish his name, which is Jerusalem. The tithe of your grain, your new wine, your oil, and the firstborn of your herd and your flock, so that you may learn to fear the Lord your God always. But if the distance is so great for you that you're not able to bring the tithe, since the place where the Lord your God chooses to set his name is too far away from you, when the Lord God your God blesses you, then you shall exchange it for money and bind the money in your hand and go to the place which the Lord your God chooses, and you may spend the money on whatever your heart's desire is, oxen, sheep, wine, other strong drink, or whatever in your heart's desire. And there you shall eat in the presence of the Lord your God and rejoice. The point was that just popped out to me. It was like God was about going and honoring stuff at the holy place, but he also realizes the logistical and stuff. But he just wants to share that with you. He wants you to go to the place that he chooses and commune with him. And, I think a lot of time when I get the food from me, I just want to get down with the food.
Yeah.
But there is a time of really saying, God, thank you for this. I'm going to share this. I'm not just going to drive through it like I usually do. I'm going to take the time and I'm going to appreciate it. I've heard Morgan talk about that from Wild at Heart, that you just actually eat your food slower and you appreciate it and you taste it instead of just rushing through it. And I'm bad to do that.
Well, I was thinking it would be cheating if I said, "Hey guys, let's enjoy a Frosty on the way home."
Right, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, yeah, exactly. As long as he sanctions it, I can eat anything, right?
But you know what? It's fascinating that you were there this morning because the same spirit. This morning I was, as you might know, studying Haggai. You know what Haggai's name means? It means feast. And the overall idea of the book of Haggai was you got to build this place to have this feast. And what are we supposed to feast on? It's just like you said, on him. But what we see the temple of being, like when you go to Israel and you actually go to Shiloh and you see all the broken pottery all around because what did they do? They had all these huge sacrifices, and then it was a feast. Like they were in this unbelievable community having this party with exactly what you're talking about. There was lots of wine involved. If you ever been to a Seder, real Seder, I'm talking, there is a lot of wine involved. And there is a lot of those things. But the point you're exactly making is that was supposed to be with him and enjoying him in the idea of it. This is really amazing.
Well, thank you there, Robbie. Anyway,
Speaking of Haggai, you reminded me of haggis. And I had haggis
I should have known.
in Scotland that was wonderful.
Oh, no.
I had haggis on a ship that wasn't so wonderful.
They know how to make it there. Lots of
Well, I'm
spice.
afraid to ask what it might have caused.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
Nothing you're familiar with recently.
Okay, good. Well, goodness. Danny, you actually have the next step. Bail us out.
I don't know that I want to follow any of that.
Yeah, no, it's, Keith, maybe cut that out or edit it to where you don't sound
Yeah,
it. We
if
don't
you
sound
just cut the
bad.
show right now,
Yeah.
my clip is from the Shack, and it's a scene where Mac and Jesus are out in a boat, and the boat is coming apart, and Mac goes in panic mode, and you'll hear his frustration and everything, and Jesus is trying to explain to him. And what I thought about that is that in the idea of comfort, and we mentioned truth, and I think Mac doesn't understand the truth of the situation. And so, we'll play the clip and I'll talk about it afterwards. But the confusion and the chaos going on in his own mind and his own heart is what we're centering on. So, the whole idea behind that is that Mac is freaking out and because of the situation going on around him. And I thought so often, and there's many stories I could tell about the situation that was at hand that was chaos. And I didn't understand what was really going on. What's actually going on there's some healing going on in Mac's life. God is dismantling some stuff in his life. But he doesn't see it that way at that moment. He does eventually. And maybe if we're lucky, we all come around eventually. But, I can remember when, certain things going on in my life. And I'm going, God, I don't understand. And so I would run to the other comforters. I don't understand what you're doing. And so I'm taking my ball and I'm going to play somewhere else. And I've done that many times in my life, not proud of that. But in essence, what happens is that we learn to trust him in those moments when we finally decide we're going to seek truth, as Darren was talking about. That, okay, Lord, and we call it raising the hood around here. Okay, the engine light's flashing, the oil light's on, and everything else is happening. There's steam coming out from under the hood. Probably better stop and check this out. And when we decide to do that, we invite Jesus in. Say, Lord, what's going on here? And he can bring truth into the situation, whereas I would have never seen it. I don't even know my own heart according to Scripture. I don't know why I feel the way I feel, but he does. And if I invite him in, then I get to see from his perspective what's going on, and it makes a little more sense. Sometimes it doesn't, but the essence is I need to trust him. So.
Absolutely. Harold, do you have anything you'd like to add on this topic? I'm sorry, I didn't go to your last show.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I really do. I don't disagree with the comments earlier about going to food for comfort, but there's a flip side to that I just experienced, and that's the absence of food being a comfort. My sweetheart was scheduled for a colonoscopy on Monday morning, and so I decided on Sunday that I would do everything except take the pills and drink all the water. So I didn't eat. I stayed up with her when she had to get awake at 3 a.m. in the morning to take a second set of pills and stuff. So I did all that with her. And yeah, I felt a little bit of discomfort in my stomach, but it was far outweighed by the joy that I felt, and especially after the fact when I realized that she was telling the medical people what I had done. And she told Art when he came over for our meal, she was telling him about it. And guys, I can't tell you how much comfort I get from knowing that, as she described it, I got another set of wings. And so there is something to be said in finding comfort in the absence of things that normally provide comfort. So anyway, that's my thoughts.
Another set of wings would have saved Icarus's life. So they're good things to have.
Okay.
Already.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Harold. The next clip, it's one that I submitted, and it's from different shows. When I sat and thought about the topic, I thought, okay, what really takes me to the place where I'm looking for comfort? And it's not always from God. Sometimes it's not usually from God. It seems like I need immediate comfort. And God isn't always about the immediate comfort, right? Sometimes, I mean, He's there. I don't mean it that way, but not the way I see that I need it. Because obviously I know better than everyone else, including God sometimes, is what I think. And I don't. But I realize that most of the time it's emotions that take me there, but there's something under those emotions that drive it. But the first part of this clip is from two different movies from Disney, which is Inside Out 1 and Inside Out 2, where they're talking about this little girl and her different emotions. And in the first movie, they deal with the typical emotions, anger, joy, those kinds of things. And then in the second movie, they introduce some more emotions, and that's what we're going to hear. And then it'll flip over to a couple other random clips that just really speak to what I feel sometimes, and then we'll talk about it. You have the voice of reason coming in finally after all of that. And that's what happens for me a lot of times is I have my little tirade. I go in the direction I don't need to go, I shouldn't go. And then God eventually just says, son, what are you really mad about or angry about or whatever the case may be? And so when I was looking at those emotions, every one of those take me, except for joy, takes me to a place of where I feel like I need comfort. Because something underneath that drove me there. Either the injustice made me angry, which we heard in the last clip, for the last part of the clip from Seabiscuit. He feels like it's an injustice to him. Before that we had from Cool Hand Luke, we have a failure to communicate, and part of my wounding is not feeling like I'm heard, right? And so when people don't hear me correctly, it frustrates me, right? But it's more than just a situation. And then, of course, I had to throw in Bill Bixby, the original "You Wouldn't Like Me When I'm Angry," because I just thought it sounded good. And no, there are times I could compare to the Incredible Hulk, just not doing great things. I've broken more things in the fit of being angry that I've had to buy again, that I finally learned my lesson to quit doing that. I remember one time I got really mad at my phone, not a smart thing, and I smashed it against the gear shift, and had to buy a new phone. And so
It wasn't a smartphone.
no, it wasn't smart enough for me, apparently. And so just stupidity, and you learn that stuff. But I just have been asking myself ever since Darren threw out the topic is, God, what keeps me from coming to you first? Why is it that you're not my immediate go-to? Why is it the refrigerator? Why is it something else? Why is it staying up late watching UFC? Because I enjoy seeing people beat up each other. I don't know. Why do I do that instead of just saying, God, I need you? And I'm doing it more and more all the time. I just know that I'm nowhere near doing it enough. And that's where I really am stuck right at the moment of saying, okay, God, help me to peel back why I don't have a deeper trust of you in these situations. So that's my story.
Well, I will say this, just to give some grace, because that's one of the words to all of us, is I think, is this whole idea of progression and becoming. You could say the same thing about Moses, or, whenever he got fed up with the Israelites or whatever. One minute he was defending them in front of God, and the next minute he was ticked off and hit the rock twice, so.
I would the process is kind of what's illustrated. We've been talking at most of these terms are in the 85th Psalm. And the 85th Psalm comes to the highlight of the idea of, as we talked about, that, righteousness would kiss peace. And this idea of truth and meeting with grace or with loving kindness. But then it says that truth rises from the ground. And the point of that, to some extent, is we're ground, right? We come from the earth. And that truth is growing because we actually don't have the facilities inside us to see absolute truth. And so if we get a little bit more truth and a little bit more truth, we spring up. But the beauty of it, as it springs up, that righteousness looks down from above, like the sun would look down on a plant that's trying to rise. And as those two kiss, that's that feeling of comfort when heaven touches earth.
So you got sun kiss.
There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I understand the orange soda. Wrong sun.
I like the grape.
Andy, I'm actually going to go to your other clip for a moment because I think it's the epitome of what we will reach to try to find comfort. You want to talk about it? What's going on here?
I've never watched this movie all the way through, but we've used this clip quite a few times. And it's from The Jerk, and I don't even know the context. You might want to say something.
Yeah, he just his girlfriend broke up with him, and he's got a broken heart. He's crushed, and he's lashing out at her that he doesn't need her, and he's looking to say, what do I really need in my life to make me feel comforted? And this is what we're going to hear. And he goes on.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking, we've all sung the song, Jesus is all I need, or said it, in a prayer, and, that's it. We say that, and then we're kind of like him. You end up with the whole house full of stuff, by the time you finish.
I got a plaque that hangs on the wall there at home. Jan's niece actually gave it to me. It says, all I need is AU football and my dog. That's not true.
Yeah.
It's funny, but not true.
I'm sure Jan didn't appreciate that. When you listen to that clip from The Jerk, you can look at it and go, "It's ridiculous." Obviously, it's over the top. But I kind of think that's how God looks at me, and says, "You really think you need this? You really think you need that?" and it's just, son, you're being ridiculous. You don't need those things. You need something deeper than that.
Yeah. I just, I like my needs better than his. I mean, seriously, it's just like, but you don't understand. I just want what I want. And there used to be a country song by Terry Clark called "I Just Want to Be Mad," and there is some point where we get to that spoiled child in us. Gonna go there. That there's a younger part of us someplace that is saying, but you don't understand. I was fouled. I was wronged. I was misunderstood. I did endure injustice. I did endure bullying. All of these different things. And there is that part of us someplace in there that is saying, I was betrayed. All of these different things. And the enemy is right there in the midst of that going, yes, you were, Darren. Yeah, Sam, you were. Yep, Jim, you were mistreated in that way. And he is helping us interpret what it is that we are hearing. And the voice is coming from within, perhaps, that there is this younger part of you it might be 3 years ago, younger part of you that is very upset and hurt and needs comfort. The question is, who are we going to listen to? There you go back to the 85th Psalm. We have to start seeking truth rather than just going with what we're hearing, because the enemy will be there to interpret all of these things and tell us why they happen and what we should do to make them right.
Thank you, Darren. I think it would be good for each of us to just ask the Holy Spirit, where do you want me to focus in this area? Do I sit down and make a list like I heard Sam do, like I did? Do I start somewhere else? But where do I start to help me start unpacking these things to where I can find true comfort? That I can find it in you and through you, instead of in these places I look that are only going to provide at the most a momentary relief, and then it's back into the grind again. Go to masculinejourney.org. We will talk with you next week.
Reminded me at the end of that journey of my prayer life. God